Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for.
Week 4 college football is here, baby. A lot of reason for excitement, a lot of good games. You know, the SEC is officially underway. The Big Ten really opens up in earnest with conference games this weekend. And so let's go ahead and get to all of my Week 4 college football picks. By the way, all point spreads provided by Circa Sportsbook. Again, check them out. Mint, Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. And if you want kind of a deeper dive on all these picks, AaronTorresOnline.com. That will be the place where we have the deep dive right up on all these games, but I'm feeling good. Picks are in. Picks are official. By the way, these lines are all not only via Circa Sportsbook, but keep in mind we're recording here at about 11 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, always subject to change. Let's get to our Week 4 picks. First of all, and by the way, we're going to bounce all around. We're not going to go in chronological order. Let's get to the big one down in South Florida. A little bit controversial. College game day is headed to Florida, Miami. You know, one of the great rivalries of my childhood was supposed to be one of the great rivalries of this year. Unfortunately, the Florida Gators just Billy Napiered all over themselves 2 weeks ago against South Florida. DJ Lagway was awful last week, 5 interceptions. And so I bring it up because there's not as much juice going into this game as we expected. Miami is a 7.5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook, over under set at 51. I'll be real. Might surprise you a little bit. I'm going to take Florida plus the 7.5, okay? So the reason being is pretty straightforward. Listen, no one, I don't think, has been more critical of Billy Napier than I have. I think it's justifiable. But at the same time, there are a couple of things that are worth noting here. One, the defense is actually playing really well. You know, the defense has given up 1 touchdown the entire year. Yeah, you don't know that because the team is 1-2. And I go back to last week. I don't know how many people know this. Florida actually outgained LSU in that game. And you know how I know that the defense did its part for Florida? Because immediately after the game, Brian Kelly was asked about what was wrong with his offense, and he freaked out on the reporter. By the way, I kind of defend Brian Kelly on that. Don't know if that was the first question he had to lead with. But I only say this to say is that I don't think Florida is that far off. Not saying they're going to win, but I don't think they're as bad as the 1-2 record would indicate. I know Bill Parcells says you are what your record says you are. I'm saying that Florida isn't quite that bad. And here's the other thing. Miami secondary, listen, it was a weak spot last year. It's certainly improved, but I think there's still some room for growth with that team. They gave up almost 300 yards passing to Byron Brown last week in South Florida. Also, keep in mind, C.J. Carr looked pretty good late in that game. Listen, I still think Miami wins this game, but I think it's close. We do have the college football betting pod. Just search college football betting with Aaron Torres. You'll find us there. We do a lot of deep dives. And I think I said 31-28 Miami would win. It might be a little bit high scoring, but could 28-24 be in play? I think it is. I think Miami wins, Florida covers. That is your official AT best bet. Let's keep it going. The big game in the SEC, bunch of SEC openers last week. This week we have an SEC opener, top 25 matchup between Auburn and Oklahoma. Producer Matt's hopping on a plane as soon as this show is done to get to Norman. Good luck, producer Matt. Oklahoma, a 6.5-point favorite, over under set at 58 in this game. Transparently, listen, I think Auburn's a really good team. I think all the stuff about Hugh Freeze was totally overblown this offseason. I do like Oklahoma to win and cover in this game, 6.5. Listen, bottom line is, going into this game, all of the conversation is about Jackson Arnold returning to Norman, where he obviously played at Oklahoma. Okay, I get that. But to me, this game actually really feels a little bit like what we saw with Oklahoma-Michigan a few weeks ago. Michigan really didn't want to throw the ball in that game. They wanted to keep it close to the vest. They wanted to run the ball. They wanted to keep it low scoring. And what ended up happening? John Mateer made enough plays with his arm, and the defense held up pretty darn well. And I think we kind of have a similar situation here. Listen, I think Jackson Arnold, it's been unfair, a lot of the coverage of Jackson Arnold over the last year or so. Even Brent Venables said this week, like, we lost a lot of games last year. It wasn't because of Jackson Arnold. But at the same time, the one thing he has really yet to do is consistently prove he can make plays with his arm, especially against really good defenses. Well, Oklahoma, top 10 scoring defense, top 10 total defense. I think they largely shut down that Auburn offense. And then conversely, Auburn, they did face one of the best quarterbacks in week 1 in college football in Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. But the counter to that is they did give up a lot of passing yards. So I think it's a big day for John Mateer. I think it's a big day for the Oklahoma offense. Oklahoma. I got Oklahoma winning and covering in that one. Let's keep it going. 2 big games in the Big Ten. You can see it on the screen. Michigan, a little bit surprising, at Nebraska. Michigan is a 2.5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. The over-under set at 45.5. I might surprise you a little bit with this one. I'm going to go over 45.5 in this game. First of all, really good game. I think both teams are actually pretty good. And I'll say this, there's a top tier in the Big Ten with Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. I think that next tier, this is a potential playoff pseudo-elimination game, okay? I don't know who I like in this game. I would probably lean Nebraska at home, but this is why I like the over. Michigan, we learned in that Oklahoma game, you can throw the ball on them. Now, the secondary is still good, but relatively speaking, probably not great. Dylan Raiola has actually been pretty good this year, about 76% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's playing really well since Dana Holgorsen took over as the offensive coordinator. And so I solely bring it up to say, I think they'll be able to move the ball through the air. And then conversely, Nebraska, number 1 pass defense, the run defense, not so much, gave up over 200 yards to Cincinnati. And I think you can move the ball on the ground against Nebraska. Well, what does Michigan want to do? They want to run the ball with Justice Haynes. They probably will run the ball a little bit more with Bryce Underwood. Do some mental math. Michigan wants to run the ball against a questionable Nebraska run defense. Nebraska wants to pass the ball against a questionable Michigan pass defense. Give me the over 45.5. I love this bet. Staying in the Big Ten. Listen, my guy. I don't know if I'm doing that right. I don't smoke. Kurt Signetti, Coach Sig and the boys. Yeah, that looked really bad. I hope the FCC doesn't see that. But Kurt Signetti and the boys, Indiana, they are hosting Illinois, top 25 matchup. Indiana in this game is a 5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. Over under set at 52.5. I guess the cigarette is more like this, right? I don't know. I don't smoke. Don't really put anything near my mouth except for a fork here and there. Anyway, back on track. Kurt Signetti and the boys get the win. Kurt Signetti and the boys get the cover. This show's completely off the rails, okay? Kurt Signetti and Indiana win. Bottom line, you know what this game actually reminds me of? Reminds me of last year. Last year, Nebraska was 5-1 coming to Indiana. Indiana was either 5-0 or 6-0 early October. And everybody said, oh, Nebraska, it's their time, blah, blah, blah. They came to Indiana and got curb stomped. I believe the final score was 56-7. And I think it's going to be the same in Bloomington this weekend. First of all, in Bloomington, night game, crowd's going to be crazy. But beyond that, I think this about Indiana. I think they're better than they were last year. That sounds controversial. Fernando Mendoza is trending to be a better quarterback than Curtis Rourke. Curtis Rourke was great. Fernando Mendoza might be a first-round pick. The wide receiver room is better because most of last year's guys are back and they're better. The O-line is better. I think the defense is better. And so, listen, I know Illinois is this trendy pick because they won a bunch of games last year. Go back and look. They didn't have a ton of great wins. You know, they beat South Carolina in a bowl game, and I think it just built momentum. Like Luke Altmaier, I have questions about a lot of the rest of the team. They played Duke a few weeks ago, easily could have lost to Duke. Indiana -5 is my official pick in this game. By the way, as producer Matt put on the bottom of the screen, we do have our Torres on Indiana account for all of your late-breaking Indiana news. Torres on Indiana. All right, those are the 4 big games, I think. I do have 3 other a little bit off-the-radar picks for the rest of this weekend. First one, North Carolina going to Central Florida. It's been a quiet few weeks for Bill Belichick since that week 1 debacle against TCU. The spread in this game, UCF is a 6.5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. The over-under is at 47.5. I like the under of 47.5 in this game. And I'll be honest, North Carolina games might just be auto under bets for the rest of the season. Because here's the thing. You look at Bill Belichick's debut. Yes, they got scorched. That TCU defense might be the best defense that they face all season long. Okay. Or the best offense that they face all season long. You look at the rest of the schedule, not a lot of great offenses. And to Bill Belichick's credit, this kind of looks like a Bill Belichick type team in New England, some in positive ways, some in negative ways. those late Bill Belichick teams, what did we see? Really bad offenses, but the defenses were still very good late into his career and into his time in New England. Well, you go through this year, after TCU, they have given up a combined 9 points in the last 2 games. The defense is fine. The offense, 127th nationally in total offense, worst among Power 4 teams. That's a Bill Belichick, fever dream right there. Like, could not be more excited to have a great defense, and the offense is just good enough. And so I look at this game. Scott Frost is now the head coach at Central Florida. I think they're okay. I do worry about their ability to move the ball against North Carolina, and I don't even think North Carolina wants to run the ball. I don't even think they can move the ball. So I just bring it up. I have the under in this game, 47.5, open at 49. That number has dipped significantly. Really quickly, 2 more a little bit off the radar picks. This one might surprise you. BYU fans, cover your eyes. We got a great BYU crowd that listens to this show. But BYU traveling cross country to play at East Carolina. East Carolina is a 7.5 point underdog in this game. BYU a 7.5 point favorite. I actually like East Carolina to cover the 7.5 against BYU. BYU, for people who haven't seen them, 1, they were on a bye last week, but 2, number 1 defense in college football. That's a big deal. That matters. And by the way, the under is about 49. The under is probably the right bet as well. But at the same time, look at the schedule and look at the circumstances for BYU. 1, the circumstances. They're playing a true freshman at quarterback, and this is his first career road start, Bear Bachmeier, okay? So first career road start. He has to fly across country. They're playing at East Carolina in what is frankly going to be probably the biggest home game that they have all year. I assume the crowd is going to be crazy. Beyond that, freshmen on the road for BYU, listen, you don't ever want to assume that a team is going to look ahead, but how can you not when you open Big 12 play next week at Colorado, by the way? Remember Colorado? They played them in a bowl game. It was a really hyped game, very emotional game. They destroyed them last year. And so I bring it up because I think it's going to be a tough crowd. Producer Matt in our private chat says ECU has great fans. They do. It's an underrated fan base, underrated tough place to play. True freshman quarterback for BYU. I have East Carolina plus 7.5. And then finally, I won't bore you too much with this, but Kent State is going to Florida State. How about this? This was the biggest line move according to Circus Sportsbook. It opened at 39.5. It is up to 46.5. The over-under has stayed the same, though. I'm going to take the over of 56, okay? Why is that? 1, I think Florida State's really good. Florida State is going to run the ball down Kent State's throat. Kent State, 120th in total in run defense right now. They're giving up about 5 yards per carry. And I think, by the way, Florida State probably will pull their starters late in the game, and Kent State could score some backdoor points. So I like the over of 56 in this game. Very quickly, again, all of the picks are available at AaronTorresOnline.com. But for those of you who want them now, Florida plus 7.5 at Miami. Auburn against Oklahoma. Oklahoma by 6.5. I have the Michigan-Nebraska over of 45.5. Illinois at Indiana. I have Indiana minus 5. I also have the under in UCF and UNC. I have East Carolina plus 7.5 against BYU. And I also have the over of Florida State, Kent State.